Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I am very excited today that we are joined by the beautiful Farzana Ali, who is an author, a well being expert, and sound therapist. Also on Instagram is known as the Sound Therapist. I have been following Farzana, and I met Farzana at a yoga workshop. It was right before COVID.
Yeah, a little while ago.
Yeah, it was right before COVID, and we connected on socials and have kind of followed each other's journeys over the years since then. And I've watched her really sort of blow up as the sound therapist since I met her. And it was still quite new, her work as a sound therapist when I met her, and she was just starting to make a name for herself. And she's recently, I'd say in the last year or two, just really like suddenly I'm seeing her everywhere, and she's published her book and she's doing really well. So I thought she would be a very inspiring and exciting guest to have on to talk about her journey. So welcome today, Farzana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for agreeing to come and chat and discuss your very exciting career with us. I think that you'll be very expansive to a lot of our listeners and viewers. So, can you start us out by telling us a little bit about your younger years? So your cultural background and your like early upbringing and influences that sort of shaped you into the
Yeah.
woman that you are today?
As a South Asian woman and from an immigrant family, education was very, very important. You go to primary school, it's just, it's common sense, it's just taken for granted. The same applied for me that you go to university. Education
Hmm.
was really at the forefront of every kind of thought growing up, of, success and academic success was very, very important. And in terms of like jobs and aspirations and having kind of things that you want to work towards, it was again very aspirational careers, doctors, lawyers, those kind of
Yep.
jobs. So it was very much, I was raised with the mentality that if you're educated, then you can do anything. And ideally, you were going to do something along the medical or legal field. And so I do
Yes.
know a lot of doctors and lawyers in the
That's the
family.
stereotype for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and for us in particular, it's very very true. Um, and I think that kind of really shaped a lot of who I am as a person, who I can, who the kind of journey that I've taken, because it was so ingrained that you're going to follow a very academic path.
Hmm.
But when I got to university, I realized that I'd been thinking so far ahead all the time because of these ideals that I wasn't ever living in the moment or thinking about what I wanted to do in the moment that I was in. So to give you an example, when I was doing my A levels, I'm not sure if they're still called A levels. I know the markings are all
I
very
think they
different now.
are. Yeah.
So I did English, I did biology and chemistry, very kind of like serious subjects, and I remember being talked out of doing something like psychology or doing what my tutor at the time called like a fluffy subject, which I actually,
Psychology?
well, this is what she said,
Wow.
and I
Okay.
really regret that. Actually, I really do regret that. But I took these really serious subjects, and I kind of got to A levels, and it just wasn't gelling. It just wasn't
Mm-hmm.
quite what I wanted to do, and I realized I've been thinking so far forward that I wasn't actually thinking about what would be good for me in the time that we were in. And so when I got to university, I knew, that I'd fallen in love with English, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do English literature, and I wasn't going to think about anything further than that. My key was just to get to university and study a subject that I really, really enjoyed and kind of take the most out of that experience. So I didn't really have a plan. It's not like I thought I was going to do X, Y, and Z. So I got to university and I absolutely loved my English literature degree. I had the best time. It just fulfilled all the kind of parts of my personality that I wanted it to fulfill. And, people had kind of said to me, about this job and that job, and journalism was something that had come up a lot as well. But it was something that other people did. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that I saw myself necessarily doing. And I remember going for work experience. So I'd finished my degree, and I went for work experience at a local newspaper. And the week that I arrived, the senior reporter had unfortunately been taken really unwell. So he was going to be off for the next 2 weeks. So the
Hmm.
junior reporter was then, bumped up to kind of cover all of his slots. And they kind of turned to me and they were like, well, you've got an English degree. You seem like, you're kind of competent. Let's see how good you really are. And they just
Oh my
gave me
gosh.
everything for the junior reporter's kind of beat. And I had a moment of like internal panic where I was like, the door's just over there. I could make a run for it. This is way bigger than I was
I
expecting.
mean, that's like the ultimate imposter syndrome. That's
Well,
terrifying.
it was just, I'll be honest. I wouldn't say it was imposter syndrome because it was genuinely I was out of my depth. It
Hmm.
was it was such a change. I'd never worked in a newspaper office, and I was all of a sudden given this huge amount of responsibility because they needed everyone to step up. And those 2 weeks went so well that they booked me for some more weeks, then booked me for more weeks, and I was being paid for this. And then, you know, the kind of one of the senior editors of like the region came and saw me and basically offered me a job. And
Wow.
was just like, I see three types of people: the ones that get it, the ones who will get it with a bit of work, and the ones that will never get it. And you fit into that first category. You just get it. This is so correct for you. You've really flourished. We've had less stress because you've taken on such a big, chunk of the work. And I was doing interviews. I was doing kind of, big stories, interviewing local people. It was, there was so much work and I loved it. I'm quite chatty. I'm quite social. I can be
Yeah.
put into a situation and, kind of make friends in anything like that. So it really kind of catered, and I'm a little bit nosy, so it really catered to all those types of my sides of my personality. And yeah, she offered me a job and was like, we'll train you, we'll do everything. And, you know, it kind of just started from there, really.
What an amazing first work experience as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, prior to that, in my teens, I'd worked in the local shop and things like that. But this was
Yeah.
the first kind of like foray into like a professional working space for something that would kind of go on to become my career. And then from there, I just have a really I can do it attitude to a lot of things. So,
Yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned imposter syndrome because I would say that's something I probably don't have. And so
Okay.
I just am like, how hard can it be? Let's give it a go. What's the worst that can happen kind of personality. So from there, I
So it's
kind of,
actually more like the fake it till you make it
yeah,
kind of
yeah, actually,
attitude.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
completely.
so kind of, from there, I worked at different magazines, had different roles, and eventually worked my way up to becoming a lifestyle director at a very large newspaper group.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long was that journey from sort of
So
like
that was,
university?
yeah, about 17 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a really, massive chunk of time. And I loved it. I really, really loved the job. I really loved the type of things that I was doing. It fulfilled, you know, my interests. It really kind of helped me see the world. I was very
Yeah.
lucky. I got to travel a lot. I got to meet a lot of people. And you have this incredible access to experts that you'd never have access to in
Hmm.
any other situation. So if
Yeah.
I wanted to know something about heart health, I could go and interview the top cardiologist in the country. If I
Yeah.
wanted to know something about, like, boxing, I could go and train with somebody and really understand it. And so it was really, for me, the perfect job. It fulfilled so much of my natural curiosity. I got to write, which I love. I got
Hmm.
to edit, which I love. I managed teams. I, mentored, people. It just fulfilled a huge part of my natural desires.
Yeah, and 17 years. I mean, that is like just that in itself is a successful career for by anyone's standards, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's incredible. So then what was there a pivot? Did you get to a point where you were like,
Yeah.
I've kind of done this. Like, how did
So,
that look?
you know, it kind of got to a point where, because I loved the job so much, I probably did push myself harder and faster than I
Mm,
needed to. And also, I was in a very senior position with a lot of responsibility, and I was burning out constantly. I was
yeah.
constantly burning out. And, I think back to and I write about this in the book actually. I think back to my life at that time, especially in the last job I had before I embarked on this journey. I would leave my apartment at 6 o'clock in the morning and get home at midnight. I was always on the go. I was always on
Oh,
the run. I would, if I was, traveling for work, I would get the red eye flight back and go straight into the office with my suitcase in tow. And so it was very fast paced, which, if I'm really honest, I think that's part of my personality too. I really thrive
okay.
off of that. So, which is probably why I was in it for so long, but it was just really unsustainable. And I
Yeah,
remember one
it's very
time,
unsustainable.
yeah, again, I was very lucky. I was always kind of introduced to tech and fitness tech, health tech, gadgets, and Fitbit sent me a watch, and
And so,
of course, if you're not sleeping enough hours,
mhm.
you know that. You don't need to be a mathematician to work out that if I get home at midnight, have a shower, go to bed, and I'm up at 5, that's obviously not 8 hours. But when you see the data on a screen and you're really like, oh my God, this is not sustainable. And of course, I'm talking about my 20s and 30s. I'm in my 40s now. So it's like, you can't maintain that. And I was constantly going through burnout. I was constantly getting sick, and I started to get really, really unwell. And I became allergic to a lot of food, and I
Yeah.
just started having these symptoms. And that kind of led me to explore a different way. And so again, there's another example where I went to see an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she was
Hmm.
like, "You need to slow down." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I hate yoga. I find it boring. It's too slow for me." And she was like, "You're exactly the person who needs it
Who needs
because
yoga?
because it's irritating you. You're exactly the type of person who needs it." And I went and tried a sound bath for the first time, and
Hmm.
that was it. I just
Yeah.
ignored it. I think when you're really stressed out and you're really burnt out and there's so much going on, it's really hard. It's really difficult, actually, if we're being really honest, to acquire or learn a new skill. However, if all you have to do is lie down and someone tucks you into a blanket, that's your responsibility done, right? And so I
Yeah.
went and had this sound bath, and I just, for the first time ever, just switched off. I felt like I'd slept. I felt refreshed. I just was like, my God, what is this?
Yeah, it's sound baths are so incredible. I remember being like, it was like I was transported to another
Yeah.
planet. What the first one I went to, I was like, what on earth just happened? I was such a deep, like meditative sleep. It's incredible, really incredible. But yeah, I'm definitely a lot of the things that you're saying about pushing yourself too hard, the burnout, the working so much. I see this with so many clients that I work with now that I'm a therapist. Like young, it's the young professionals, and
Yeah.
they're stressed out and they've got all this going on and their work schedules are not sustainable. And
Yeah.
they're coming in and they're like, I just want to feel better. Like, why am
Mm,
I having panic attacks? And I'm like,
mm,
you need to slow down.
yeah.
Like, this
But
is
I
not.
think I wouldn't even blame them though. I think our entire society,
Yeah.
is set up and glorifies hustle culture and
Yeah.
glorifies being burnt out and glorifies, like you can be at a dinner party and everyone's talking about how tired they are, and this is this one-upmanship of like, well, I've done this and I've done this and well, I'm doing this, and it's kind of part of our, I would say it's part of our culture. So I don't blame them for doing that, and I can see why I fell into that trap as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very much to do, like, I don't want to just blame London, but it's like any sort of big
Major city.
city. Yeah, and it's just it's the culture, and now that I'm also in my 40s and I'm also a therapist, it's like you can just sit back and it's like, I wonder how long that you're going to be able to sustain this. Like when I
Yeah,
see people doing that, because it's not possible to do it for like more than 20 years. It's
yeah,
just
absolutely.
so many things come up. And actually, when the group of people that I trained with, there were a lot of ex finance. That was like one of the biggest like groups of people that came to have a career shift and
Mm,
do something more that they felt connected with.
hmm.
And it was finance was the biggest one, which I just thought was funny. Like they like lost their souls and they came to find them again.
Amazing.
Yeah. So would you say that through just like career burnout that that was a major rock bottom for you, or was there a defining moment where you felt like you had a rock bottom in your career that just like floored you?
Yeah, there was a moment in particular. So I worked in a very, very fancy building, and we had a very fancy canteen on one of the top floors. And I'd gone upstairs, and I was sat in the canteen, and I just could not bring myself to go back downstairs. So, one of my team members, she was on mat leave, and I'd taken on so much extra work as well, trying to make sure everything was running smoothly, and already my role was very big, and taking on more stuff just meant that I just was in a state of overwhelm, and I'd kind of gone from like functional freeze to just straight out freeze, and I just
Yeah.
could not bring myself to go back down the 2 flights of stairs to the level, the office level that I was on. And I really kind of spent, a couple of hours upstairs, and I just was like, this something has got to shift. This is just unsustainable.
Hmm.
So that kind of pops out to me as a real kind of moment where I was like, this isn't this isn't good. Um, but again, like I say, the actual job I did love, and I
Yeah.
can't say that it was something that, I wasn't in alignment with or I didn't enjoy. I did enjoy it, and I was very privileged to be in a position where my knowledge and the vast amount of access that I had to knowledge, I could then share, and I could share with people. And I kind of feel in the same way that I'm still doing that, but in a
Yeah.
different reality. So for example, like, my old job, I might have found out about, new supplements, new tech, new things that are going to make you feel better, look better, feel happier. I'm still kind of doing the same, but it's just much more, the feedback is much more immediate. The feedback that you get is much more in the therapy room that you're in.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a lot of the skills that you learned or
Mm,
that you did in your previous career are still all applicable to what
yeah.
you're doing now.
Mm,
And I do try to tell people that, when they're like when they feel like they've taken the wrong path or they're doing the wrong career, that there's no wrong choice,
yeah, I agree.
and every job is a lesson. You learn a
Yeah.
skill, and everything that I've done over the years, which has been so many things, I
Mm,
get to apply all of that to running my own private practice, having my own company, having a podcast, like
yeah.
social media, blogging, like all of it. It all
Mm,
applies. So, yeah, so that's good that you get to do that still.
yeah.
And then you don't feel like you're like disconnected so much from your former self, right?
Yeah, plus I think, if I hadn't been an editor for that many years, for the last 10 years of my career, I was working as either an editor or a director, and so if I hadn't had that experience, then you know maybe the book writing would have been a very different experience. A lot of the feedback that I get from people who have read the book is that they find it accessible, they find it really easy to read and really easy to understand, and that might not have been something that I would have been able to produce had I not had all those years
Yeah.
editing and writing behind me.
So when you decided that something had to to shift.
Yeah.
What was that journey? How did that look?
So, while I did have that, moment that something needed to shift, it would be a lie if I said to you that I then decided I was going to become a sound therapist, because it didn't
Yeah.
happen like that. I knew something had to change, something had to evolve, but I guess, I was still at that time going as a client to sound baths and to sound bath practitioners and receiving. And it kind of got to a point where I was like, actually, you know what? I want to learn more about the science of this. I want to learn more about how it's impacting your brain and your ear canal and why it works and what it's doing. And I'm going to be really honest with you, and this might not be popular for other sound practitioners to hear, but prior to the last couple of years, I would say that it's been quite a it's a very holistic, and it is still a holistic practice, but the explanation there was quite fluffy. If I'm being
Yeah.
brutal, like, how does it work? No one quite had either the answer, or the way they were articulating it wasn't really resonating with me.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when I think about the work I do now and the type of clients I have, I think the fact that I do have quite a scientific approach actually does mean that I attract certain types of clients who want sound delivered in a way that is, accessible for them.
Yeah, and I would also say that from your work experience previously, you were very accustomed to working with like the top level of whatever industry it was. And these are people that expect results.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, absolutely. And you need to be able to explain your craft in a way that there is evidence and science, and you can really kind of back it up. Because when I first kind of mentioned it to a few people, they thought I'd gone off on, like, you know, a woo-woo train. And,
Yeah.
and and I use that word, that term woo-woo, not even in a derogatory way, because I think there is a space for that. And sometimes woo-woo is just science that we haven't understood yet. So I'm
Yeah.
not trying to kind of put that kind of community down. It's just that my personal understanding and my personal relationship with sound, I felt, had to be a bit more scientific, a bit more rooted, a bit more grounded. And so then
Yeah.
that's when I went and kind of studied and really kind of understood and learned what it meant to use sound in a therapeutic way, and to get the trauma training, and to get the type of training that was adequate enough to take people through really kind of big transformations and really big journeys that you can have with sound, and be able to support them fully and correctly. And then, I guess I still thought maybe I'd still be writing, and then the sound got more and more popular, and it resonated with more and more people, and then it just kind of has become, I wouldn't say accidental, but maybe accidental, like where I'm at right now. So
I think it's really important the way you've just described, the woo woo and then versus the science, because I think that that is kind of the gap in the market, if you will,
mm,
between a lot of the hustle, Western sort of patriarchal
yeah,
culture,
mm,
that they want results and this, and they're very like,
mm,
just, charts and graphs and
mm,
whatever. And they,
mm,
those people,
yeah,
view a lot of healing and holistic practices not as a science
yeah,
and are very dismissive of it. So I think that you were able, through your own experiences, lived experiences, and
mm,
then personal experience with the sound healing, to sort of bridge that gap, because
yeah,
you were like, I need to be able to present this to people who might have been a bit skeptical
yeah,
about it, and they
yeah.
needed, hardcore evidence. So are you able, in simplistic terms, to sort of explain the science behind what happens with sound healing?
Yeah, of course. So, most simplistically put,
Uh-huh.
sound changes the frequency in your brain, and it kind of slows down your brain waves, which in turn slows down your heart rate and your breath rate. It tells your body that you're safe. and it's safety that is what we need the most in order to work through stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it's the switch from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic, right? So it's all
Yeah.
the nervous system, which is like such a buzzword on social now, but it's good. I'm glad that it's getting the attention that it deserves because arguably for the large 17 years of your very busy career, you were not in your parasympathetic
No,
nervous
absolutely
state.
not. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. So it's just about teaching your body safety. At the
Yeah.
core of it, it's about teaching your body safety. And it's something that is so ingrained biologically within us. And so if you're in nature, which is, there's a big disconnect, but if you're in nature and you're by the water or you're hearing the rustling of the trees, all those things make us feel better. And we might
Yeah.
not know exactly why, or it might be that you're thinking, oh, well, I've had time to go for a walk and that's why I feel better. And yes, of course, that is true as well. But if on that walk you're hearing, you know, this sea lap against like the shore, and that's
Hmm.
also helping, and so it's that disconnection that we have to nature, and we're all biologically, geared to respond positively and negatively to sound. We just
Hmm.
don't kind of tap into it. And I think my journey with sound is almost kind of like showing people and telling people that this is completely natural. This is what our ancestors were doing. This is what we
Hmm.
need to kind of go back to. And of course, during COVID and the pandemic, where we all kind of took a step back from our everyday grind and our everyday life, that a lot of people realized something has to shift. And people enjoyed being at home and baking, and they enjoyed being at
Yeah.
home and going for walks. And a lot of people discovered parks they didn't know were close by.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's getting that connection back to yourself, and getting kind of back to what is kind of innately within us.
Yeah, and COVID was my like mental health sort of game changer as well. I mean, it made everyone stop, but
Mm,
it was also in that time that I, like you said, I started hiking every day and
mm,
I loved it and I always felt so much better after. But then when I started training to be a therapist and I learned like the healing powers of nature, I was like, oh, that's why I've always
yeah.
since I was so young, like I just want to go be like in the grass or in the park or like outside where there's no cars. That's
Mm,
always been really something I've loved, but I never understood why. But it is
mm,
innate in us.
mm.
Are you familiar with Dr. Tara Swart?
Yes, yeah. I'm a
Oh,
huge
I
fan.
love her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I discovered her during COVID as well on a podcast, and I'm obsessed with her. But
yeah,
she, on that being in nature, she shared something a while ago about hearing birds song.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and when you
The
hear
studies,
birds,
yeah.
it calms your nervous system because
The studies are
it,
there. The studies show that, bird song has such a positive impact on our nervous system. And of course,
yeah,
the idea is that for birds to thrive somewhere, there's no predators around. And,
yeah,
essentially, our predator has changed. So before it might have been that saber-toothed tiger that everyone talks about, but now it could be a deadline. But your response, your biological response, is still the same. And
yeah,
so when your cortisol goes up, it's to help you run. It's help you to either fight or fly away from the danger. But our lives are set up differently. So we are, a deadline can set off that same reaction. And
yeah.
actually, it's just, yeah, our predator is just different. So
Yeah, I mean, arguably, we've become our own
um,
predators.
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
quite sad. And then, when your body doesn't experience safety or it thinks that it's not safe for
mm,
such a long time, then you do start to get sick, as you were saying.
yeah,
And I think that's where we see a lot of like autoimmune
yes,
gut, like it's such chronic stress. What it does to your body is just it's
yeah,
horrible. I think being in chronic stress for so long, like how detrimental it is to your
yeah,
body.
yeah,
Yeah, really
absolutely.
bad. So it was a gradual shift then for you. You
Mm,
discovered sound healing, and then you knew that you needed to do all the learnings to understand it so that you could
Mm,
implement it into your life.
mm. Yeah, and so it just the kind of the journey kind of just then moved quite quickly from there. And
Okay.
and I love seeing the change in clients. I love
Mhm.
seeing how positively and how quickly it can impact somebody. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
So how long was the like transition from finally stepping away from your high-powered, important previous role
Hmm.
into becoming a sound therapist?
Um, do you know what? I can't quite remember because I don't have such defined boundaries around it. It just kind of, it just kind of, I don't know. It just kind of all of a sudden I was a fully fledged sound therapist, and this was my full time job. So there wasn't any hard boundaries around it, if I'm being really honest.
Okay.
Um,
Was there like a day where it felt like, I don't know, like where you gave your notice and you stepped away, like, and was there like a leaving party?
no, no. It kind of, it was very free flowing.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was no kind of hard boundaries. I think in terms of feeling like, oh wow, I really am a sound therapist,
Hmm.
it might be when I was offered the book deal, when I was
Okay.
like, oh wow, okay, like oh we're gonna do this. Like I don't know if it was that point that I was like,
That's
well,
exciting.
yeah. So there wasn't really a defined kind of moment. It just happened very organically.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about the book deal and the book?
Yeah. So this is rather unbelievable, but someone slid into my DMs on social media and was like, "Have you ever thought about writing a book? We're seeing the kind of work that you're doing, and we think it's really exciting." And I just, again, it goes back to that, why not attitude. So
Yeah.
we jumped on a call, and I was like, "Look, I'm not sure if I can do this, but like, let's kind of let's kind of see." And of course, at that moment, they were just asking me if I'd ever be interested. So you still have to write a book proposal, you still have to put things together. And I remember my commissioning editor was just like, let's put a proposal together, and we'll have another chat, and we'll talk about kind of themes and how it might look, and we'll go from there, and I'll help you and I'll work through it. And on that second chat that we had, I kind of said to her like, oh, everything's really rough. It's not kind of finished, but here are my thoughts. And so she was like, okay, no, we can work with that. And so I kind of started with my thoughts, and I was like, chapter one, I'm going to talk about X, blah, 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 blah. Chapter two, da, 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 da. And she was like, oh my God, we've got a proposal here. Because for me, something being finished meant that it was ready to print. So,
Yeah.
but for her, a proposal was exactly what I'd done. But for me, I was like, oh, it's all really kind of scatty and it's all over the place. And I just bullet pointed everything. And she was like, no, this is exactly what we need. Because I'm so used to, like, when I say
Yeah,
something's
well, I mean, it was your career.
yeah,
You're
if
like,
it's
yeah.
finished, it's hit send, take it to the printers. So she was like, okay, let's get this onto this document, write it all up. I'll, send it to me. I'll tweak bits that need to be tweaked, and then eventually, in a couple of weeks, we'll present it, and it'll just to let you know these things are long processes and it takes time and a bit of back and forth, but we'll get it really perfect. So I sent it to her. She then replied back saying, "This is ready to run. I'm going to pitch it next
Wow.
week in the meeting." She pitched it, and then she came back and said, "We're ready to offer you a book deal." And then I was like, "Oh,
What?
I really am doing this." So it
Okay.
happened. It happened in a very, very quick way.
That's so funny that they got you through Instagram.
Yeah. I know, because I was like, how did you find me? And she was like, oh, I've seen you kind of do, because by then I'd done quite a lot of press and publicity and
Yeah.
for sound, and so she was like, we really like what you're doing, and have you ever thought about it? But that first meeting when I told her, because obviously she didn't know, and I was like, oh, just to give you a heads up, I used to be an editor. And
Uh-huh.
you could tell it was almost like she just saw stars and rainbows, and it was
That
just
she
like,
was like
yeah,
perfect,
she's really,
like
really happy.
client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that
how long did it take you to write the book?
I had um gosh, I can't quite remember in terms of the actual couple of months to write, kind of to write it all, to get it all out. But then obviously you go back and forth with the editing, and the book is in, because it was coming out in America at the same time, it had to be translated into transatlantic
Yeah.
English. So
Yeah.
there's, there was a couple of spellings where I was like, this is incorrect to me. And they were like,
Yeah.
no, we need it to be kind of like in that middle ground between, like, American English and UK English. So um, that kind of took a couple of months, and then the cover and things like that. And then, yeah, bang, it was there.
That's so exciting. And how has your family handled, navigated your transition from like editor into author and
I'm
therapist?
very, very lucky. I have my immediate family is so supportive of everything I do. And I think the good thing about sound is that you just have to give someone a sound bath for them to be on board with
Yeah,
your
I know. I
message.
would just be like, Mom and Dad, lay down.
Yeah,
Here
yeah,
we go.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
so it's very, it's very easy to get people on board when you can just show them exactly what you're doing and the difference that it makes. And that's kind of what happened. So I was just like, this is, something that I'm kind of interested. I think I'm going to kind of pursue this as well. And they were like, go for it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, reflecting back on your career
Mm.
and considering what your low points were, what advice would you now, having, thriving Farzana, what advice would you give to yourself at your most lost or lowest point?
Probably not to work so hard, actually. Probably not to
Mm,
work so hard. But I also think that everything that you go through kind of takes you to where you need to go at the end.
hmm.
So, you know, the fact that I did do biology at A level, and even though I hated it,
Yeah.
it actually served me really well over the years for the other things that I've done. Or if I was taking apart a really kind of, you know, medically focused story, health story, as a writer or an editor, to all the way to now understanding how the brain works and things like that. So I kind of feel like everything ties in anyway, and that it all
Yeah.
kind of is part of the journey. But for myself, my younger self, I probably would have said, don't work so hard because it's not worth your health, which I stand by.
Yeah, unequivocally
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this is what I enjoy about this work, is that it's showing people that you can still achieve your dreams, you can still do everything you want to do and tick off everything you want to do, but make time for rest, make time for supporting yourself, and making sure that you're adequately nourished and rested as well. And actually, that way, you also achieve your dreams, but in a healthier way.
Yeah, completely. It's reminiscent of what you said at the very beginning, that you were always stuck in the future,
Yeah.
like always planning ahead, planning ahead, planning ahead. And in
Mm.
therapy, we try a lot with clients to bring people into the here and now,
Yeah.
because the core of anxiety is like worrying about future things that don't exist yet, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's trying to bring people into the here and now, reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your body, and that is the epitome of what you're doing with sound healing. So,
Yeah, so it's just kind of taking yourself back into yeah, like you say, the present. So I think, yeah, my advice would be, don't work so hard. Because again, and it's a trap that over the years I've fallen into, where I'm looking so far forward that I never enjoy the accolades or the moments. And I think back to this particular moment, the day after my book launch, where I spent the morning in bed, and I just was like, I cannot believe
mm,
that's happened. And I really took that morning to sit in it and to be
yeah,
full of joy and to be happy and to really kind of recognize that I'd done it. Because up until that point, it was just like the editing needs to be done, that, I need to voice the audiobook, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to get the press releases out, I need to, you're still kind of thinking forward. But the day after, and I had two book launches. I had one for like kind of press and influencers, but the one I'm talking about is the one that I had for family and friends, where I was just surrounded by people I loved, people who really want to just see me succeed and were super supportive. And I just relished in that whole evening. And I had a cake that kind of looked like the book, and
Oh,
I just really kind of sat in that moment and really kind of took it in. So
yeah, I did a workshop or I attended a workshop recently about success and important things to do to be able to hold on to it.
yeah,
And it's really important for anyone at any life stage to celebrate the small wins. So any accomplishment that you have, you need to stop and acknowledge it. It's kind of like having a gratitude list,
100%.
because otherwise we end up like, I want to make this amount of money, and then you
Yeah.
start making this amount of money, and then you're immediately on to like, well, now I want to do this and that, and like you have to stop and appreciate so that you can actually hold the
No,
things.
absolutely. And it's so funny that you say about the gratitude, because I do have a daily gratitude practice, and I have had
Mm.
for many years. But it's funny because while I will make time to be grateful for the sunrise, or grateful for I live really close to the water, grateful for a riverside walk, or grateful for these like tiny moments, the big moments I'd never kind of take time out for. I know that sounds really kind of like really strange, but I never, when I bought my apartment, I never really took a moment for that. Or when
Yeah.
when I've achieved like really big things, I never take a moment for those big things, but for the little things I would. And
Yeah.
actually, for me, it was about learning that actually you should just need to be thankful for the big, the small, for all of it, and really live in the moment rather than thinking, like, oh, what's going to come next, or how am I going to do this and this and this, and actually just being really, really content with the moment and with
Yeah,
what's.
and I think everyone is guilty of that. We all do that.
Yeah.
Can you show us the book?
Yes,
Just so you
yes.
can see it. I know you have a copy there, just so that everyone can
Can you
see.
see it? Yeah.
Yep, sound healing. Yay.
Yeah. Sound healing.
Such a lovely cover as well.
Thank you. That took that took a lot of me kind of going back and forth. I was like, I want it to be like sound waves. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
it's lovely.
something I'm very, very proud of.
Yeah. Well, I will get a copy. I promise. I will read it now. So I'm
Well,
very very
the good
intrigued.
the good thing is that when I first spoke to my publishers, I was like, I cannot have a book about all the benefits and beauty of sound without giving the reader some sound. So there's actually a QR code in the back, which when you scan it, takes you to a digital sound bath that I've recorded. So you
Oh
can,
wow.
so in your own home with some headphones in, you can experience a sound bath as well.
That is a very good idea. Was that your idea?
Yeah, well, I was like, I can't talk for this long about, like 200 pages of how sound is so wonderful. It's going to change your life because, we're very lucky living in a big city, living in London. You do have sound baths and you have
Hmm.
very easy access to it. But actually, for everyone, and if you're in a remote part of the country, you might not have that access. So this was my kind of like my gift to the reader, if you will.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Farzana. This has been a
You're
really
welcome.
engaging, interesting conversation, and I've loved hearing your journey. So, and I think it's going to be very inspiring for a lot of people. So,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you.
And I look forward to continuing to follow your journey. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.